Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Core Productions here to talk about The X-Files, Season 6, Episode 6, titled The Ghost Who Stole Christmas. The episode's description reads as follows. On Christmas Eve, Mulder and Scully find themselves trapped in a haunted house with two ghosts who are determined to prove just how lonely the holiday can be. The episode was written by Chris Carter, as well as directed by him. The episode originally aired on December 13th, 1998. Before going any further, I'll tell you a couple of things. One, this is an spoiler-free podcast. If you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend you check it out and then come back and give us a listen. Secondly, if you're listening on one of the platforms this podcast is now available on, please follow and feel free to check out my YouTube channel, Corn Productions, where additional content can be discovered. You'll note that this video is dropping the same day this episode aired, 26 years later. So happy 26th anniversary to this episode. And you also note that I'm jumping quite far ahead of where I am currently in the rewatch of this show. This is to celebrate Christmas month, looking at a Christmas-themed episode of The X-Files. So, to give you some background, the 6th season of The X-Files was starting to show its age. The mythology of the show had more or less become incoherent. And in fact, the current story of the mythology would come to an end later in the season. The early parts of the season, we saw a lot of lighthearted episodes to start. Whereas the comedy episodes of the show were once a rare treat, they seemed to dominate the show's 6th season, especially early on, and this was not a trend that the fans were particularly happy with. Now, while they enjoyed the comedy episodes, they wanted a horror sci-fi series with occasional comedic elements and not the other way around. This episode aired directly after a lighthearted two-parter titled Dreamland. According to Internet Movie Database, this was actually the cheapest episode to produce of the 6th season, and up until the 11th season's episode, this episode actually had the smallest cast of the series. Several seasons earlier, Lily Tomlin, one half of the ghostly duo in this episode, had let the production team know that she would be up for appearing as a guest star in the series. Ed Asner was also a fan of the series and was readily agreed to appear in it. The late Asner is someone I've talked about before on this channel. He appeared in Cobra Kai. Apparently, Bob Newhart was asked to play the role, and he turned them down. The episode is fine. Some fun moments. It has some fun moments, some cute Mulder and Scully interactions, which at this point was the main draw of the series. No matter how far into nonsense the series fell at times, the biggest draw was always their chemistry. As I've mentioned before, this was pretty much the origin story of the term shippers. If you use that term to describe a television pair that you would like to see together, then you have Mulder and Scully to thank for that, because that originated with the X-Files. And it's funny because they spent so much time together, they had some serious issues, the actors that is, David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson, with each other. You know, I'm sure you've heard of the expression, familiarity breeds contempt. And I also happen to like both Lily Tomlin and Ed Asner, the guest actors in this episode. Alright, so the episode begins with Mulder sitting in his car at night. Scully drives up, and he tells her that he was about to give up on her. It's Christmas Eve. Scully has presents in the back of her car to wrap, but Mulder talks her into listening to the details of his little stakeout, which is off the books and off the record. Apparently, at this house that he's staking out, he's looking for evidence that the previous occupants of said house have come back. And before long, it becomes clear to Scully that Mulder wants her to do some ghost busting with him. The previous inhabitants, Maurice and Lyda, end up killing themselves and are now haunting the place every Christmas Eve. Scully says that she doesn't believe in ghosts, a statement which I find suspect given the history of the show, but whatever. In fact, I think she's actively seen ghosts in episodes like Beyond the Sea, which was her father, and Elegy. And ordinarily she might be up for indulging him, but she has Christmas stuff to do. Mulder gets out of the car and proceeds towards the house, and she's asking him what he's doing, and doesn't he have somewhere else to be? Well, let's see here. His father is dead, his sister is abducted, and actually her whereabouts are currently unknown. And when was the last time you actually saw him talk to his mother? It's been at least 3 seasons. So no, I don't think Mulder has anywhere in particular to be, unless he's stopping by Skinner's for Christmas. And of course, despite her objections and telling herself that she isn't going to go, Scully follows her crazy partner, but this is partly fueled by the fact that she has lost her keys and she thinks that he has them. Spoiler alert, he does not. It's a dark and stormy night, literally. They hear the chimes of a grandfather clock and the doors close, seemingly trapping them in, and credits. When we come back, Scully is frantically trying to get out the doors. Mulder, meanwhile, is intent on searching the house and doesn't care about Scully saying she needs to go home, and it's not like he can really help her in the first place. He also does not care about her ramblings and rationalities. Ghosts don't exist, yada yada yada. We get it, Scully. A door creeps open. Scully admits to being afraid, but she says it's an irrational fear. And pretty much all fears are irrational. They investigate and find a fireplace that has been recently put out. Mulder mentions that all the previous occupants of the house have met bad ends, and that there have been 3 double murders, all on Christmas Eve. Mulder finds some mysterious floorboards, pulls them up in between, doing little pranks on Scully, and they discover some dead bodies. One of them happens to be wearing the same exact outfit as Scully. Twinners! Though one is looking more attractive and healthier than the other. Can you guess which one? They end up walking into the same room over and over, which reminds me of an earlier episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. They eventually get separated. Mulder finds himself unable to go through a door because it's bricked, and he's confronted by Maurice, played by Ed Asner. Already talked about him, but I'll give you the rundown anyway. 417 credits for him, which is rather absurd. He was the voice of Carl in the movie Up, a regular on the Mary Tyler Moore Show, and 2 episodes of the miniseries Roots. A lot of his work seems to be in voice acting. He passed away in 2021, but mysteriously he still has credits in 2024 coming out. Mulder doesn't know he's a ghost, but he suspects so. Maurice screws around with him and eventually psychoanalyzes him about his relationship with Scully. He thinks that he puts up with her endless rationalizations out of fear of loneliness. He calls Mulder a narcissistic, overzealous, self-righteous egomaniac. Well, I'm convinced he certainly has Mulder's number. Meanwhile, Scully encounters Lily Tomlin, aka Lyda. Tomlin has 66 acting credits, including 34 appearances on The West Wing, a regular on Murphy Brown, and the movie I Heart a Huckabees. She calls her relationship with Mulder codependent intimacy, that her only joy in life is proving him wrong. Maurice happens in, with Scully pointing a gun at both of them. Eventually, she sees a hole in his head, and she ends up fainting, as I'm sure I would do the same. Maurice laments the tricks they have to go through now. They used to have years to haunt them, and now they only get one night. And the pop psychology stuff they use just annoys them and isn't very effective. It's been a long time since they had a really good double murder. They need to up their game. They chose Christmas because it's the time when people are filled with hopelessness and despair. And given that Mulder and Scully seem pretty miserable, this should be an easy work for them. Mulder meets Lyda as he's trying to break out of the room. He figures out who she is and is confused how she's basically aged. She uses her tricks in front of Mulder, which seems to intrigue him, and she pulls out a book titled The Ghost Who Stole Christmas. Is that a real book? I'm going to have to look into that. She also ends up showing him her wound, how she died. She ends up saying that she doesn't show her hole to just anyone. Well, that's just too much information. And for the record, that's not as dirty as it sounds, though it's also much less pleasant, I'm sure. She's trying to convince him that Scully's going to shoot him, so he should shoot her first. Scully wakes up. She's alone now. It's her turn to talk to Mr. Asner. He too is trying to convince her that Mulder is going to kill her. He asks, "Do you realize how disturbed that man is?" I certainly do. And that's me talking, not the character. Scully is confronted by Mulder, who acts more insane than normal, and he ends up shooting her. But it turns out to actually be Lyda. And whoa, calm down, Lyda. You have Mulder acting like he's awake for a change. The real Mulder finds Scully on the floor with a bullet wound. She really seems to believe that he did it, and then she shoots him in the gut. But nope, it's once again Lyda putting on a show. A Christmas song plays, Scully crawls, Mulder stumbles around the house in his stomach. According to Internet Movie Database, Gillian Anderson was not a fan of the scene where she and David Duchovny have to crawl across the floor bleeding profusely. The mixture coagulated very quickly and became very sticky. Yeah, that does not sound very pleasant at all. Scully and Mulder find each other, and Mulder realizes that they aren't actually shot. He gets up, tells Scully to do the same, that it's all in their minds, and then they leave the house. Lyda and Maurice lament their failures as they hold hands. Isn't it romantic? Mulder watches Scrooge at his apartment, a much, much older version, and we hear a knock at the door, revealing Scully. Who else would it be? She couldn't sleep. She's curious if any of what happened out there really happened, or if it was just in their heads. And Mulder says, yeah, it must have been just in their heads. She poo-poos with Lyda's earlier accusation saying it's not like she enjoys proving him wrong. And he asks, when have you ever done that? And that's a very good question. Though I'm pretty sure if we actually look at the series, there has been a couple of times where Mulder was in fact wrong. And she asks, why else would you want me out there? I guess she's asking if he wanted her out there to prove him wrong. And he asks, you didn't want to be out there with me? And then he questions if that sounded narcissistic of him. She suggests that maybe she did want to be out there with him. And despite the fact that they weren't going to exchange gifts, they end up doing exactly that, and that is where the episode ends. I mean, as far as the X-Files go, this was actually kind of touchy-feely. Almost hopeful, I would say. Well, guys, if I don't hear from you again this season, I'm probably going to hear from at least a few of you, because I have loads more content coming out this year, most of it not solo work. But, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and all that jazz. That's all I got for you for this video. If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join one of my Core Productions Facebook pages. You can buy something from the Core Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a copy, which is a new way to support content creators such as myself. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video as well as subscribing to my channel. This is Dave from Core Productions.